To make the workplace truly fair, we have to build fairness into everything that we do. Every practice, every procedure, every system. It's not a program. It's not an add-on. And you should approach it with the same kind of rigor and scrutiny that you use for other business imperatives. Change is hard, really any kind of change. If people are sitting in position A and we want them to move to B, we can basically do one of two things. Either we try to convince them, all these individual minds, that could be hundreds, millions of people, or we could change the environment and make it easier and more attractive for people to actually move to B. We need to understand what's happening in our organizations, understand what's broken. Imagine that we would like for hiring managers to actually focus on people's qualifications, on the skills they bring to the job, rather than whether they look the part or not. It turns out that just informing hiring managers that this is the right thing to do is probably not going to be very productive. But instead, you could anonymize people's resume and take off the name, and therefore help your managers get this right more easily. We recently worked with a multinational financial services company headquartered in the US that also was concerned about their performance appraisals and whether they might differ, not because of people's performance, but potentially because of people's social identities or demographic backgrounds. And we found an interesting pattern, namely that in self-evaluations, it was particularly women of color who gave themselves lower ratings. We suggested to the company they discontinue sharing self-evaluations. What happened was that the gap between women of color and white women and white men disappeared for newly hired women of color. Now, for leadership, it's particularly challenging for women. Seeing is believing. You need to see the change in order to imagine. In fact, we do have some very good evidence from India, which in 1993 amended its constitution with the provision that a third of village head positions had to be reserved for women. People started to believe in women as leaders, and their parents, for example, started to report that a career aspirations for their daughters was to become a politician. It also encouraged women to be more likely to run for public office, to speak up more in town hall meetings. So seeing really is believing. It can change what we think is possible for ourselves. If we get this right, fairness will not be simply an initiative, but how we work. If we treat employees fairly, if we support them equally, if we compensate them fairly, they will repay that type of fairness with more loyalty, with higher performance. And so my hope is that in the next 5 or 10 years, we will see more individuals thrive, truly thrive in their jobs, be happy in their jobs. And that will lead to less turnover, of course, for the firm. But more importantly, it will create people who love coming to work.